Hello and welcome back to all 452 of you avid consumers of Pax Dei content, as well as the nearly 60% of you who have not yet chosen to hit that subscribe button. My name is Altari the Professional Gamer, and today we are going to be going over the most recent tech FAQ that Mainframe dropped for us this week. This is the first FAQ that we've gotten since the developers have come back from their summer vacation a couple of weeks ago, and we have a lot of exciting information to go over with how servers and the tech for Pax Dei are designed and developed. So there's a lot of cool stuff to get to here, and I want to go ahead and jump right into it. But in case you haven't done so already, be sure to like this video, share it with any of your friends who might be interested in Pax Dei, and as always, hit that subscribe button so you can get notified when we post any new videos to talk about Pax Dei. So let's go ahead and get into this new information. To start off, we have the many different worlds of Pax Dei. That world generation is going to be the same across any shards. What are shards? They are essentially servers, or they're identical servers of the same map that could be regionalized. This is your typical US West, US East, Europe, Asia, and all of the various servers that can pop up in any other MMO that you're typically acquainted with. Now, within that world, there are regions. These things can be like Gallia, Gothia, Anatolia, and they're regions that have several provinces located within them. Now, a province is essentially what you can think of as a map or a set of maps. And within a province, you are going to have valleys and home valleys. Now, a home valley is going to be comprised of a individual zone server. So a zone server is a dedicated Unreal Engine server that is operating for that particular zone. In this case, a home valley. Now, within the Heartland Valley province, you have home valleys, and then the things that are in between home valleys, which are known as the wildlands. Those will be handled on most likely a different server than the servers that are comprising the home valleys. That being said, the backend is controlled by several different APIs, including databasing, game service management, and all of that. So we have the backend, which is handling all of our databasing, and then those are communicating with the individual zones of servers to make sure that everyone's operating off of the same information. Now, if all of this sounds semi-complicated, the reason for that is because it is, and that's why there are network engineers to produce all of this interconnected framework. The interesting bits of information that come from this initial picture that is painted for us is that players are going to be walking in between zones. This is something that's going to be happening infrequently, and it should be happening only in these isolated parts of the map. Most of the borders of these zones are going to be impassable terrain, like very high up mountaintops or something like that. So the locations where you can actually physically transfer are going to be a lot more few and far between. For those of you who are just adding in, home valleys are the places where we as players are going to be able to claim land and build in a PvE only zone. So these Heartland home valleys, these are going to be locations that are potentially bottlenecked that players will transition from a PvE zone to a potentially PvP based zone. Now, that being put aside, which I'm sure Mainframe is already taking into consideration, these transitions are supposed to be relatively seamless. You won't be able to see players on the other side, or NPCs for that matter, but the transition shouldn't really incur some form of load screen or something like that, which makes the world feel a lot more alive and not self-contained into all of these individual servers. When you are transitioning between different provinces or regions, or even Heartland home valleys, you might see some form of loading screen temporarily while it loads the entire map in. This will also be the case for things like dungeons, where you're going into an entirely different map from the world, the heartland, home valley, the province that you're in currently. The seamless transition of players between these zones will all be something that you're just transitioning across from. It's not going to be a wall that you hit into and you have to select that you're transitioning or not. It entirely seems like we're just going to be transferring as we're walking across zones. Now, for initial release, Mainframe has told us that they're expecting approximately 7,000 players to exist on a given shard. Remember, shards are like the overarching world server for Pax Dei. So in one shard, we can expect to have approximately 7,000 players, and those players are going to be distributed across 3 to 4 Heartland provinces. Heartland provinces have anywhere between 6 to 8 different home valleys, it seems. And in each of those home valleys or zone servers, we can have approximately 150 players online at one point in time. So that begs the question, what happens if we have more than 150 players on one of these zone servers at a given time? Because 7,000 players in total can exist in this world server or shard. Mainframe has already come up with a solution for that, where they create zone instances where zones of players are separated. In other words, if there are 200 players in a particular zone, separate instances of the same zone are going to exist with 100 players in one zone, 100 players in the next zone, in order to accommodate for the overpopulation of that particular area of the shard. In addition to that, they have explicitly stated that they're working on various code to make sure that we as players are being placed in instanced zones where all of our group members, all of our members of our clan are going to be located, so that the people who you are working with are typically there and you don't have to worry about transitioning between different zone instances. That being said, rest assured that because the backend APIs are all communicating between each other, persistence is going to remain across all of the servers. So if something is going on where you're building a home on one zone instance, that home should exist in the other zone instance. Another interesting fact about how the world shards will work is, depending on population load, Mainframe is going to try and do the best job that they can to communicate what the best world shards are for players to join to avoid having too much overpopulation. But as we all know, with games like New World, launches of MMORPGs can lead to massive distribution inequities between different servers and different regions. And if that balance gets tipped too far in one direction, you can have relatively unpopulated shards and then relatively overpopulated shards and not much in between. In order to accommodate for this, Mainframe has stated that they will either provide as a service the ability to world transfer, or if they're trying to disperse a population in a particular way, they might provide that service free of charge so that players can get to playing with the people that they need to play with the most. This is particularly refreshing because being able to think about this before the problem occurs is critical to not creating frustration with players around a launch. In addition to that, if you are building in a server, in a world shard, and you decide to transfer, there needs to be a solution for transferring all of the materials and goods that you had on the server you were originally on and moving that. In order to do that, Mainframe is working on potentially a system that includes blueprinting any of your builds so that you'll be able to transfer those to a new server and place them down. Blueprinting might be something in the future that we will be able to buy blueprinted builds of other people's structures and reproduce them ourselves. This is a very interesting aspect of what could be an entire real estate economy in Pax Dei, and this is something that I'm very interested in learning more about in the future. When it comes to transferring from shard to shard, players should have some way to either put all of their items in a magical bag or a blueprint of some sorts to be able to transfer over. One of the major complications with this has to do with elevation and how elevation is a major factor in building your structures. So with all of that being said, there's a lot that is still being worked on. With regards to any more information that we can gather from this tech AMA, I wanted to take a minute to talk about PvP and how that's going to be affected by zoning and shards. So there is a current ongoing discussion on the Pax Dei general Discord where players are discussing the different implications of having only 150 players available in a given zone. As we know, these are initial numbers that Mainframe is giving us. Mainframe is doing a really good job at trying to not overpromise and underdeliver by providing us very realistic and reassurable numbers that we can have for the number of players that we can expect on a server at initial alpha release. So the important thing to note is that these are numbers that are only going to grow as they begin to get better hardware and develop out their software, their back-end APIs, and as they optimize the game. That being said, 150 players per zone, 7,000 players per shard, that is still a very ambitious number that they are achieving at such an early stage in their development. And it's very exciting to see that even in a zone that we have right now, 150 players is still 50 more players than in New World Wars. At the very initial release of New World, in a PvP war, which is a very structured PvP event, you would only be able to have 100 players in at a given time. Now, that PvP structure was a very popular structure, if not for some other issues with server stability, as well as balancing and other aspects of the game. It was quite a popular system that kept a lot of players in game for a really long time. Mainframe knows the importance of PvP to players, and they're actually going to be developing entirely different zones from PvE-based Heartland, Home Valleys, and Wildlands for specific rule sets. And that's going to be somewhere where we're going to see much larger scale battles occurring, and they might even dedicate more server resources for those particular zones in-game. All of this is a very interesting glimpse at what the technology that's making Pax Dei is all about. And it is very refreshing to finally be able to cover another FAQ with all of you. And I'm looking forward to all of the many more that we have in the future. Hopefully, we will be able to, before the end of the year, see what combat is going to look like in Pax Dei, as well as some of the social systems too. If any of this interests you in the slightest, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with any of your friends who might be interested in Pax Dei. Until next time, I'm Altari, the Professional Gamer.